All right, now it's looking right. Okay, so last time we actually progressed pretty far. I know that was astounding to everyone, but we actually started chapter 6 and we went all the way through until actually the last seal, or at least that's what I have. And so we're on in the notes. We are on seal number 5, and I'm just going to see if there's any other notes, but I don't think there are. I believe we used all of those last time.
Such an interesting turn of phrase and timing too.
So this would be what we're at right here.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm trying to see if I've got. Let's see.
Sorry, here's one.
I don't have 1 and 2. I'm sorry.
I don't know how much we missed. I might have 1 and 2 at home.
Okay. All right.
So we'll add this.
If not, I can get you copies.
I'll look.
Okay. All right. So we're in Revelation 6. The Lamb has started to break the seals, and last week, these notes for us are set up like I've been doing, where you're kind of looking at the personalities, and we've seen Christ break the first seal. You remember it was the horse, the white horse with a rider on it, and that rider really was he came in as a conqueror, but non-militarily. In other words, apparently politically, he conquered, and that fits with what we see. In Daniel 9. In Daniel 9, we see that the prince who is to come, which John will later call the Antichrist, he's called the beast. This man will have many names. He's got many names in Daniel, and he's got many names in the New Testament. But popularly in the New Testament era, we call him the Antichrist, even though that only appears in John's epistle, the Antichrist. But my point is, in Daniel chapter 9, verse 27, this man will come on the scene and he will make a covenant with the nation of Israel. Be reminded that this all ties back into Daniel 9. Really, it ties back into many places in Daniel, but Daniel 9 is where we find that there are 7 years left on the time clock for Israel. And so we see that lining up with Revelation 6. This covenant, this period of time, the time clock starts to tick off again when this Antichrist signs a covenant with the nation of Israel and brings peace temporarily to the world. He's going to be seen as kind of a savior of the world, and so that kind of lines up with Revelation 6. A conqueror with a wreath on his head, a victor, but not militarily, politically. And of course, Tim LaHaye and them tried to create that in their books, right? And what that guy looked like. I think they made him a Romanian, which is kind of interesting because he apparently does come out of the revived Roman Empire, so that's probably why they do that. Romania. You go into Eastern Europe and you go to all these Slavic countries and you hear their language, and then you go to Romania and it sounds very different, and it's because it's a Latin-based language. Romania comes from the word Rome, and they migrated up there into that area, and that's why they're not Slavic.
Okay, cough drop.
So y'all didn't really need to know that. That was superfluous, totally superfluous information. But it's interesting. And so that's why you have a Romanian in Left Behind series. Okay, so we have the first horse, and he appears to be righteous too. You know, he really would. To the world, he would appear to be righteous because this is a guy's a peacemaker. He came on the scene. He does some political moves. He creates some kind of a peace treaty, apparently between Israel and the surrounding nations. No more having to worry about a two-state solution somehow. He's going to work all that out, and so that's what we see in the beginning. But that is very short-lived. It's very short-lived because the next seal, when it is open, and this is all in your notes. The next seal, when it's opened, you have another horse, right, with a rider, and he's on a red horse. We talked about the red is from the Greek word pyros, which is like pyromaniac, the guy that runs around and throws, burns candles down in the forest and starts forest fires and all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, men start to kill one another. And it says he had a great sword. And one of the things that I want to keep pointing out here, and we'll point it out when we start in chapter 7 again, is who is in control here. Because you don't see, these guys are not in control, right? Who is in control is God. Jesus is the one that's breaking the seals, and God is the one that's giving them the power to do this. All right? You see that in the language. We pointed it out next time, and when we get to chapter 7 in just a minute, you'll see it. I'm going to point it out again, and it's in your notes. Then you have the black horse. So you have war, you have killing, you have war. And by the way, in that red horse, it said it was granted him. So who's granting that? That's the one that's in control. So don't ever think, and the reason why I'm pointing this out is recently I had somebody arguing with me about some of these things. And there's this belief system out there that came along. It got very popular in the late 80s and early 90s, and we now it's got a title. It's called the pre-wrath rapture of the church. If you've ever heard of that, a guy named Marvin Rosenthal, who actually used to be the head of all things of the Friends of Israel. Remember the guy that came and did the Seder with us? That wasn't him. But same organization, the Friends of Israel. He had already been kicked out by then. He got booted because that's not that is not the Friends of Israel position. They're pre-mill, pre-till, But anyway, he does all of this juggling, and he pushes. He says the beginning part is man's wrath and God's wrath. And the Bible say the beginning of the tribulation, and the Bible only exempts us from the wrath of God, and that's what he says, which it does. But the problem is, from the very beginning, it's God that's controlling it. In fact, as we get to the last seal, or the sixth seal, not the last one, we get to the sixth seal, it specifically says those people on the earth know where this is coming from. And they know it is the wrath of God and of the Lamb. So anyway, I want to point that out. This is divine authority being granted. God is the one that's in control. This is if you want to call it a more passive form of his wrath, but it's the same kind of wrath he unleashed on Job too. In Job's case, Satan couldn't do anything until God said, yes, you can do that, So God's in control here. Divine authority. The third one was the black horse and the rider. We have famine. And we talked about this is, if you know history, this is a natural sequence, right? So, you have war, you have famine, you know, and then you have in verse 6, the ashen, pale horse and rider, you have death. That's, again, as I pointed out last week, that's. I mean, I remember growing up and seeing all the advertisements on food for the hungry and all this stuff, because those people over in Africa were just, they're tribal, and they were just killing, and they'd wipe out each other's crops, and then they'd starve to death. It's just it's the same thing here, but it's globally. It's global. And so, and then in the fifth seal, we pointed out the fact that the focus here is not on the martyrs, but it's the prayer of the martyrs. In that sense, it's a judgment. So the persecution has already begun on those who are putting faith in Christ early here in the tribulation period. And of course, they're dying for their faith. Okay? And they're under the altar in the heavenly temple. And they're crying out, how long? How long are you going to put off punishing those who have, taken our life? I'm paraphrasing this. Obviously, I don't have it memorized. But, and of course, God says, but in so many words, more have to be martyred. There is a certain number, and so that's what's going on there. But the point here is the martyrs are dying, but the doom of these people that are doing this is certain. So many die, then it's my turn. According to my plan and my timing, then I'll take care of them. All right? And then we get to the last, not the last seal, but the sixth seal. The last seal before we go into chapter 7. And this is what we read. We read this, I think, last time. Why don't we have someone read that? It is to start on the sixth seal and go all the way to the end of the chapter, 12 to 17. Listen very carefully what it says.
I looked when he opened the sixth seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood, and the stars of heaven fell to the earth, as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. And the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the commanders, the mighty men, every slave and every free man, hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand?
All right. So they know where this is coming from. I've never. Y'all live in Northern California, right? Do y'all ever feel? Did y'all ever feel earthquakes?
Yeah, all the time.
Is that pretty unsettling?
Big ones.
Yeah, big ones.
They're
been.
interesting, probably in the same way you guys go out and look for tornadoes.
Yeah, right.
We just can't see them coming.
Yes, I've been told by those people who have been in large earthquakes, it's so terrifying because there's nothing you can do. You can't go it's not like this little piece of earth is shaking so you move over here and it's stable.
Right.
There is nothing stable around you.
We had several earthquakes in Alvarado. We actually did.
We've had earthquakes around
But they
here,
were small.
but
It's
very,
like, almost like you go up over a hill and
Yes.
you kind of
Yes.
you feel like you get lifted up.
yes,
But
That
that would be
had
it.
to do with fracking.
Yeah.
Probably.
that's what they say anyway.
We were children
yeah.
during the really big
Never
one.
had one. All
Right.
of a sudden they start fracking and moving stuff around underneath the earth, and
Yeah,
you're gonna have
the
consequences.
crust is gonna shift around? I'm sorry, what'd you?
We were children in
Rebecca.
'88 when the really big one hit
Okay,
in the
yes.
Bay Area in San Francisco.
I remember it.
And
very well.
yeah, we remember, I would have been 11. So we remember that quite clearly. We had a
Yes.
swimming pool, and my grandparents were there, and the swimming pool was almost emptied. I mean, the waves were enormous coming out of it, and we're an hour and a half away from San Francisco in the valley.
My
We-
goodness.
We were 3 hours. We'd been 3 hours away up in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and we felt it.
My goodness.
That was a big earthquake.
So,
We were
so
at the
that's a big,
riverside,
I'm sorry.
and the earthquake was strong enough to knock my brother out of his bed.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you think that's going to compare to one that God says is a great earthquake?
It'll be absolutely terrifying.
And what is the result? What does it say the result is?
The mountains move, the islands move.
Okay, I want to. I'm so grateful we just got through with the series on creationism, because for the first time it hit me when I read through this time, because I did all that study on the tectonic plates, and there's a guy who works at Los Alamos, which is you got to be a brilliant guy to work at Los Alamos. That's the only kind of people that work there, except for maybe maintenance or something. But I'm talking about the guys that do all the engineers and stuff. His last name's Baumgardner. I can't remember his first name, but he's one of those guys that just brilliant guy, and he's a believer, and he's a young Earth creationist,
Wow.
and he came up with the model for how the flood occurred. And it's if you really enjoy that stuff, because if you don't, you're going to be bored to tears. In fact, he'll say stuff that you say, I kind of get the gist, the big picture here, buddy, but I'm not getting all that detail. Anyway, it's on Facebook. I mean, YouTube. You can go on YouTube and watch as he speaks to a group of creationists and talks about his theory.
What do you look for under YouTube?
You would look for Dr. Baumgardner, or you would look for catastrophic tectonic plates, something like that.
Ken Ham had him on his show one time.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. But my point is this. There was a time where we would read this and think that's hyperbole, right?
Right.
I mean, okay, wait a minute. You're talking about an earthquake that moves everything on the earth? Come on. Right? I mean, even if you were in the big one, you'd say, but in China, that didn't do anything. Well, if the theorists are right, and really it's the only theory we have even remotely close that would explain what happened during the flood. And again, when you have something that large happen on the earth, there's evidence, folks. And the evidence goes even beyond what, Ken Ham says about millions of dead things buried in rock layers all over the earth. That's true too. We have that. But what we have is, between North America and Europe, we have a young rock layer. I mean, the bottom of the ocean is young. The rock is young. Yeah. I'm trying to look for another word, but maybe that's the only one.
Well, in that
It's so
rift-
much younger than the continents. The continents are old. That is very young. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The rift that goes down the middle of the ocean is constantly bubbling
Yes,
up,
it is.
and it's forming this lava that's
Yes.
a new layer.
Yes. And so we have all of this evidence. And so, I mean, there is no other way it could have happened. And not that God had to use some kind of natural thing, but he did. And so this is you don't have to be a young earth creationist to realize that the crust of the earth is fractured. And there are major cracks in the crust of the earth that are still there. Now, all there has to do is be something that initiates that, and it shifts a little bit. That moves everything on the earth. So I believe this is literally true. Now I want you, so who is going to be scared on the earth when this happens?
Everybody.
Everybody. So you understand why these people are just saying, I mean, that's not where I would go if I felt an earthquake. I wouldn't go to a mountain or in a cave or something, you know. I mean, I'm paranoid about going in a cave anyway at times. What if something fell and I can't get out, you know? But
The waves will come up from an earthquake, and you will want to be in the mountains.
interesting.
Why?
Yes, the tsunamis. It'll create tremendous tsunamis. So, and maybe that's why. Rebecca, I hadn't thought of that.
I think they're just running away.
There wouldn't be anywhere to go.
Yeah. Well, again, that's why I think of, the testimonies I've heard. It's like, where do you go? When you're in the midst of an earthquake. So I can't imagine a better way to terrorize everybody on the earth than that. And, at least for just a moment, you have the situation like they always say in war, there's no atheist in the foxhole. For just a second, there won't be any atheists, and then they'll, because they know where this is coming from. And that's why all of these theories about, the church being in so long and then not, no, we're gone. Because over and over and over, the Bible promises that we are not destined for God's wrath. We just studied that in what was it in Revelation? I mean, in the Romans 8. It says that in that long passage. Y'all remember that? I'm gonna do y'all like my wife does me. Don't shake your head if you don't understand me. I'm just trying to say the right thing here, okay?
No, well, I'm not going
I know y'all wouldn't do that. That doesn't happen in y'all's home.
That's what I was sitting here thinking while he was talking about this. If you wanna see some of this almost literally in life, go to Yellowstone National Park and walk the walkways. And
That would be cool. I'd love
You
to do
see all
that.
the streams and stuff bubbling up.
Yes.
We need to take the children.
Active volcano.
It's really
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I would love to go up there and see all that someday.
Before the earthquake gets here.
Yeah, that's true. I was just thinking, let's see, I'm looking for, who will bring a charge against God's elect? God is the one who justifies, God is the one who condemns. Christ is he who died, yes. Maybe that's not the passage I was thinking. Yeah, that's not it. That's not it. Anyway, there are many passages that talk about us being protected from the wrath of God. The very fact that we are saved and righteous, declared righteous, removes all of the wrath of God from us. Nothing happens to us that's related to the wrath of God ever. So not only is this rapture biblical, it's theologically logical that we wouldn't be here. So anyway,
Romans 5:9, Brother Russell.
Romans 5:9, read it.
Much more then, having now been justified
That's it.
by his blood, we
That's
shall
it.
be saved from the wrath of God through him.
Yes. Yeah, so we're not going to be here, folks. Not even a second of this. We're not going to be here. Now, there are going to be believers here, that read Bibles, that, went to church all the time and they knew all the truth and And all of a sudden they look around and say, it happened. It really happened. I better get right, and stuff like that. But as far as true believers, boom, we're going to be gone. And again, there's going to be literature laying around. There are going to be Bibles laying around. People are going to be looking for answers. And of
Left
course,
Behind series.
in just a moment, we're going to be looking at Romans 7, and we're going to know where some of that testimony is going to come from. And so, just to close all of that up, all of this, we know all of this is possible. One of the things that created the Ice Age, it's almost like God said, here's a preview, the flood thing. Here's a preview of what it's going to look like in the end. So when all of that happened, the reason why we had an Ice Age is all of that stuff going up in the air from all that volcanic activity, and it blocked the sun out. And that's why, we believe in one. The creation theory holds to one, which is the logical thing, where we have an Ice Age immediately after because of the blockage of the sun. And eventually, over time, that stuff falls out of the sky, and you go back, and that's why you have all these civilizations. This is not creationism tonight, but it all fits. That's why you have these cities, like this is where the idea of Atlantis came from, because we have cities off the coast of almost every continent, ancient cities that they find, and they think, well, those people didn't have gills. It's just that the ocean level was lower. They built cities, and then the Ice Age was over, and yeah, so covered them up. I'm sure they got out of there, hopefully, but their cities are still there. So all of this kind of stuff that's described here. And by the way, when that volcanic stuff gets up in the air, it can cause it to look red. The sun trying to get through that. What do they call those? There's a term for that. Little droplets of, I can't think of it. Anyway, it looks, I'm sorry. Did you come up?
During wildfire season in California, the sun is red.
There you go. So all of this can be described very literally from what we know about the flood and the aftermath, and even common occurrences today. So, okay, so we're finally to chapter 7. Chapter 7. So we're gonna just read just a little bit of this. So what happens now is an interlude, because we don't get to the seventh seal until chapter 8. So this has given us information that we need to know that relates to this first part. Okay? So in the notes it says, since the Lamb began to break the seals on the scrolls, and we're not going to read that because we've already looked over that. The sixth seal brings, second paragraph, the sixth seal brings a great earthquake, has devastating effect on the atmosphere and the crust of the earth. There's no doubt the minds of those on the earth where this wrath is coming from as they cry out to the earth itself to save them. They shout, and notice this, fall on us, hide us from the presence of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of their wrath has come. And the question is, who is able to stand? He's about to answer that. Who is able to stand? That's the idea. Who's able to survive this? I mean, that's a valid question, right? With all that we saw going on in that sixth seal. So drop down, let's see, third paragraph, second sentence. That question will be now answered. There seems to be two possibilities here in relation to chronology. Some people believe this goes all the way back to the beginning in chapter 7. Others believe, and that's even in our premillennial camp, pre-tribulation camp, Others believe this is in the chronological order. In other words, it's after that sixth seal and before the seventh one. These things take place. The sealing of the 144,000 and all of that. So great scholars on both sides, not sure. And so the next paragraph says the vision begins with 4 angels standing at north, south, east, and west. The 4 winds picture God's destructive action against the earth in prophetic literature. Now don't just take my word for it. I've got the verses there. If you go back and look at those verses, that's the way that phrase has been used. So this is not a flat earth verse. Listen, you look at me like that, Jeremy. I've got family that intelligent family. I'm sorry, they may see this. Okay, we're moving on. No, there's even a movement among believers
I know.
that believe in a flat earth. Okay, I'm sorry if it's your dad or something.
No.
I'm sorry, okay? So, but they're really, in the day we live in, there are people who are buying into flat earth theory and believe that these verses support that. They believe NASA's fabricated all the scenes from the sky and all this kind of stuff. I'm sorry. You just need to.
The theory of the computer comes in.
Yeah.
When the computer started getting popular, it kept saying, we're flat earth. I mean,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's just, yeah. So before the wrath continues, another angel ascends to the earth. By the way, who's in control here again? God's still in control, right? God's always in control. Even in this 7-year tribulation, when he lets a lot of evil, permits a lot of evil to happen, he is the one that is running the show in the sense of authoritatively controlling everything. Because he's the one who sends the angels that holds back any more of, and if this fits in chronologically, after the 6th and before the 7th, then at this point he sends angelic beings to hold everything back for his next point on the docket to take place. And that is to seal God's bondservants with God's seal on their foreheads. The number of the bondservants is 144,000, not Jehovah's Witnesses. This is Jewish people. God goes to great length. He took all of this room in our Bibles to make sure John understood that, we have how much of the church in America that believes that we've replaced Israel, and here's Israel right here, right at the end, in their land. We'll see they're in their land. They've rebuilt their temple. All this kind of stuff. This is not the church, folks. This is Israel. And there's a couple of things I want to read, and then we'll close. First is what this mark is. This seal. This seal is. This is used in other places for us, like believers in the New Testament. The word seal. But in this context, and in the context of the New Testament, it means like a brand, a mark of property. In other words, these are his people, and he chose them, and he marks them. And one of the questions here that, look at the footnote number 3. It says Paul clearly distinguishes between 2 groups of God's people, Israel and the church, as developed in Romans 9-11. Of course, y'all have heard me ad nauseum talk about Romans 9-11 because it's so important. It's so incredibly important. In about 18 lists of the sons of Jacob, somebody asked me about this. Martha asked me about it, I think. How are we going to know who's Jewish? And somebody else asked me about maybe Charles did, asked me about, because you see lists of the sons of Jacob, and they're different as you progress through the Bible, okay? So this is the best I can do. Nelda, they're different in the sense that sometimes some tribes are left out and others are included. So this is what the Dr. Thomas says. He says, in about 18 lists of the sons of Jacob or Israel is in the Old. There are in about. Wait just a second. In about 18 lists of the sons of Jacob or Israel in the Old Testament, different tribes are omitted at different times, but the number of them is always 12. That's interesting, isn't it? This is another indication that the ethnic Israel is in view. This identification of the group best accounts for the distinction between them, because we're going to see a contrast here. We're going to see a contrast between them and the innumerable multitude in the next vision who come from all ethnic backgrounds. So notice that here we have the sealing of the Jewish, we call them Jewish evangelists or Jewish, because they're in juxtaposition to all these others that are saved. And the natural conclusion is these Jewish people are sealed. They start to share the gospel. And the fruit of that, of people who came to faith through them and then were martyred, is what we see in the next vision. In the next vision, they're all Gentiles. Okay? So we'll finish that next time.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Is Ephraim and Manasseh, are those considered?
Took Joseph's place.
Well, they were Joseph's sons, but didn't Jacob take them as his sons? Adopt them as his sons?
I think he just
I know that
he
blessed
just
them,
blessed them,
he
and
gave them a blessing. But I think he actually took them as his sons, as adopted sons, because as in Genesis goes, that Joseph actually got 3 blessings because of his blessing as his son, and then as Manasseh and Ephraim. And of course they were up in the north, and I think they were actually. But that's the question I have. I'm not sure.
I don't remember that well enough to answer you. I'd have to go back and look at that. I just believe that because of Joseph, the way God had used Joseph to preserve the nation, then Jacob blessed both of those sons. And when they went up to the promised land, obviously they functioned as 2 of the 12 tribes because they got part of the land, and that left, was it Levi out because the priests didn't get land.
That was the 5th. I think I brought this up once before. That was the 5th generation, but the firstborn did not get the blessing because Manasseh was the firstborn and Ephraim. And and it's got the blessing.
That's interesting.
But as Judah, as the southern part of Israel was called Judah, a lot of times in the Old Testament, that the northern section of the land there is called Ephraim.
Yes, it is. Yes,
Okay.
it sure is, because they were the largest tribe at that point.
Okay, I got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now this that we were reading here in chapter 7,